Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer from English with Jennifer. It's tax season. One thing I don't like about being an independent online teacher is filing taxes because it's rather complicated. Would you like to know more about paying taxes in the US? Or do you already know a lot and think you can pass a short quiz? Well, let's start our lesson and I'll go over some basic vocabulary related to taxes. Now, I'm not an expert on the subject, but I'll explain things as I understand them. What do we call the tax that people pay on the money they earn, meaning the money they make? C. Income tax. Our income is what we earn. It's the money we make. Earn is the verb. Earnings are what we receive. Wages refers to a fixed amount of money that you get for work that you do within a day, a week, or a month. People can also make a profit. That's the money they gain from a sale of some kind. For example, people can make a profit from the stock market. There are different ways to earn income, but our income is taxed. The government takes a percentage of our earnings so that it can pay for all kinds of government expenses. Tax can be a noun or a verb. We pay taxes. The government taxes our income. They tax our earnings. Our earnings are taxed. Expenses refers to what we spend our money on. In the US, college is a big expense. And at the federal level, I'd say defense is a big expense. The government spends a lot of money on the military. Who exactly collects our taxes? The IRS. The Internal Revenue Service. What is true about sales tax in the US? B. Most but not all 50 states have sales tax. This is an additional amount of money we pay when we purchase things, like food. But other stores besides grocery stores can have sales tax.
Actually, not all grocery stores have sales tax. It depends on the state. In some states, groceries are not taxed. These items are exempt from sales tax. Let's play a little shopping game. At a Massachusetts grocery store, which of these items have sales tax? Well, we'll just draw a line straight down the middle, and then we'll have two groups. On the left are things that are exempt from sales tax. Milk, bread, fruits, and vegetables. These things are not taxed, but hot prepared foods at a grocery store are taxed. Pet food is also taxed. Vitamins, non-prescription medicine, paper goods, and household cleaning supplies all have sales tax in Massachusetts. What other items are tax exempt? Most clothing, not appliances, not cars, and not food from a restaurant.
Thankfully, clothing is usually tax-free. Where I live, a lot of people head north to New Hampshire for tax-free shopping. That's because New Hampshire doesn't have sales tax and Massachusetts does. Sales tax varies across the country. It can be high or low. Massachusetts levies a statewide tax of 6.25%. Levy means collect. Levy a tax. The other two kinds of taxes that I listed are less important for this lesson, but very briefly, estate tax is the tax on a person's estate when they die. All the things a person owns of value is their estate. It's rather complicated, so I'm not even going to attempt to explain this in detail. Excise tax is tax on a specific good. It can be paid at the time of sale, like on cigarettes, or it could be paid annually. In Massachusetts, we have excise tax on our cars. If a family has 2 cars, they pay excise tax on each car. Thankfully, the longer you own a car, the less excise tax you pay. A newer, more expensive car will lead to a higher excise tax. When must Americans pay their taxes? B. But maybe I should have included a 5th option of never. But I'll talk about getting in trouble with the IRS a bit later. The answer is by April 15th. So right now, it's tax season. It's not fun unless you're an accountant. I sure like the December holiday season a lot more. During tax season, we get ready to file our taxes. We file our tax returns. There are forms we must fill out. There are documents we must collect. If you work for a company, your employer usually sends your tax forms in January. This is a W-2 form.
I'd like to give you a quick look at a W-2 form. When you file your taxes, the IRS will ask for your Social Security number. If you don't have a valid Social Security number, you can file with what's called an Individual Taxpayer Identification Number. On a W-2, your wages, tips, and other compensation need to be listed. A bit later, I'll explain about money withheld, and specifically Medicare and Social Security.
If you're an independent contractor like me, you get a bunch of 1099 forms from people who paid you in the previous calendar year. So you have to keep track of all your earnings and business expenses. When you do freelance work, you might have a lot of miscellaneous earnings. That is, money from different jobs and different sources. Thankfully, we can file our tax returns electronically, online, so it's not difficult to meet the April 15th deadline. A deadline is the due date. We must file our tax returns no later than April 15th.
Here's a quick look at a 1099. As I mentioned, you can have income from different sources. A person can have income from rent if they own real estate. You can earn royalties if you've published a book, for example. The form is quite short, but a taxpayer can have several of these 1099 forms. And there can be numerous business expenses, so the process of filing can be quite complicated.
In the US, does everyone pay the same percentage of their income? D. No, we don't all pay the same percentage. The US has a progressive tax system. It's based on a person's ability to pay. The more you earn, the more you pay. Higher earners pay a higher rate, lower earners pay a lower rate. The system divides us into groups called tax brackets. If you earn little, like $10,000 a year, you fall into the lowest tax bracket and pay 10%. If you're lucky enough to earn well over $500,000 a year, you fall into the highest tax bracket and pay 37%. That's if you're single, one person, unmarried. So a single person who earns less than $10,000 a year will fall into the lowest tax bracket, but another person may be filing as head of the household. That means the person has a family. The person has dependents. people who depend on him or her financially. That could be a child or another relative who lives in the same house. So this head of the household may earn $13,000 or $14,000 a year, but because they have dependents, they also fall into the lowest tax bracket. Married people usually file jointly, meaning together. So if a married couple earns less than $19,000 a year, they too will fall into the lowest tax bracket. So there are different factors to consider. Some argue that a flat tax system is fair and a lot simpler. Flat tax means that everyone pays the same rate, like 10 or 20%. What do you think? Is one system better than the other? Does it depend on the country? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do people pay their taxes? D. People pay their taxes different ways because people receive their money different ways. When you get hired at a company, you fill out a tax form called a W-4. This tells your employer how much money should go to the IRS each time you get paid. In other words, money is withheld from your paycheck. It's not a bad thing because if it turns out you overpaid, you get a tax refund. You get money back. The IRS will either mail you a refund check or deposit the refund into your bank account. And if not enough money was withheld, then you owe that money by April 15th, but it probably won't be a lot.
Let's take a quick look at a W-4. It's officially called an Employee's Withholding Certificate, and it tells you the purpose. You complete the W-4 so that your employer can withhold the correct federal income tax from your pay. It's pretty straightforward. You fill out your name and address, social security number or tax ID number, and then you state your status: single, married, head of household. There are steps to follow, and at the end, you sign and date it and return the form to your employer.
Many freelancers pay quarterly taxes. They estimate how much they'll earn within the year, and then they make a tax payment every 3 months. Again, if they overestimate, they'll get a refund. If they underestimate, then they owe money. If you don't make those quarterly payments, it's still okay. You make a single payment before April 15th, but you'll likely have to pay a penalty. You need good financial planning because if you owe taxes and then can't pay that money by April 15th, you incur tax debt. Incur is a formal way of saying have. You cause yourself to be in debt. You have debt. That's not good. Tax debt can be a big problem for some people, but the IRS will allow people to pay what they owe little by little. You can request an installment agreement, so you can pay your taxes in installments.
Okay, let's do a super quick check because we're at the halfway point. What do you remember? What kind of tax might you pay in a U.S. store? Sales tax. What kind of tax do people pay on their earnings? Income tax. Which agency collects taxes in the U.S.? The IRS. If there are products that are not taxed in a store, how can we describe them? We can say they're tax-free, they're tax-exempt, they are exempt from tax, they're not taxed. Okay, American taxpayers submit W-2 forms and 1099 forms. When must they file their taxes? When's the deadline? April 15th. 2022 is an exception due to a holiday, but the traditional deadline is April 15th. What kind of tax system does the U.S. have? A progressive tax system. What's the alternative? A flat tax system. When taxpayers file, what kind of status might they have? Can you name at least two? Single, head of household, married filing jointly, and another option, by the way, is married filing separately. What makes a person head of household? Dependents. If you pay too much in advance, what do you get back from the IRS? A tax refund. Last question. If you fail to pay, what do you incur? Tax debt. Okay, let's go on.
Is having dependents the only factor that lowers the amount you owe the IRS? B. No. A qualifying dependent makes a taxpayer the head of a household. Because you have to provide for another person financially, you receive a standard deduction. That means you can deduct or subtract a certain amount of money from your gross income, that is, your total earnings. The IRS allows different deductions. Another example of a deduction is a donation you make to a charity, a charitable donation. After you calculate all your deductions, you arrive at your adjusted gross income, AGI. This is your taxable income. There are also tax credits. A tax credit is subtracted from the money you owe the IRS. You might get a tax credit if you buy an electric car, for example. Families can get help with the child tax credit. Parents receive a tax credit for each child they have, but higher earners receive less of a credit. If you're self-employed, you have business expenses, and you're allowed to list these expenses on your tax return. In other words, you can write off certain expenses, like use of the internet and travel expenses. This helps adjust the amount of money you owe. What happens if you don't file your income tax return? I'm going to say the best answer is B, but it's rather complicated. You won't go to jail for not filing your taxes, but if the IRS finds out, they can take action against you. Part of the job of the IRS is to collect back taxes, the money that people owe from the years they didn't pay. The IRS will also calculate a new sum that the person owes, including penalties and interest on the amount not paid. So failing to file and failing to pay can lead to trouble. One factor is how much you earned. If you earned $10,000 back in 2000 and didn't file, you'll probably be okay. But if you earned over $800,000 in 2000 and you didn't file, good luck hiding that. What happens if you lie or cheat when you file your tax return? C. If you try to avoid paying what you owe, if you deliberately try to hide how much you earned, that's called tax evasion, and it's a crime. You'll pay a high penalty and you may face jail time. Basically, everyone needs to remember that tax contributions are important. Paying taxes is a civic duty. It's our responsibility as members of society. We pay into the system so that we can benefit from it. Who actually files the tax returns? E. Taxpayers or accountants. If you only have a W-2, if you're single without dependents and your finances aren't complicated, you can file on your own. It's not that difficult. There's even software to guide you through the process. If, however, you have your own business, you have multiple sources of income, you have dependents, if your family circumstances have changed, you may choose to hire a certified public accountant or CPA. This person can help you file your tax returns and also help if you get audited. If the IRS has reason to believe that you made mistakes on your tax returns, they can officially investigate your financial accounts. This is called an audit. You can be audited, you can get audited by the IRS. What other taxes do Americans pay besides federal income tax? E. When we file our taxes, we're responsible for paying federal, state, and local taxes. And each household is different. Some people own property, so they pay property taxes. Remember how I talked about money withheld from someone's paycheck? It's very common to have Medicare and Social Security withheld as well. A percentage of our earnings goes to Medicare. That's health care for the elderly and people with disabilities. A percentage also goes to Social Security. That's a program that provides for the elderly and people with disabilities, people who cannot work to earn wages.
Final quiz. Let's see what you remember from the second half. What lowers the amount of your taxable income? A deduction. What lowers the amount you owe in taxes? A tax credit. What can an independent contractor write off? Business expenses. If a person hides how much they earn in order to avoid taxes, what crime is that? Tax evasion. If the IRS thinks you made errors and wants to investigate, what's the process called? An audit. You can get or be audited by the IRS. Who can help you prepare and file your taxes? A CPA, a certified public accountant. Why is additional money withheld from a paycheck? What two programs do taxpayers pay for? Medicare and Social Security. We've arrived at the end of the process. This is a 1040, the form that taxpayers submit along with their W-2 or 1099 form. You can see the first field is where we indicate our filing status. There's a field for your deductions and dependents, and then comes the fun math section. This is why many people hire an accountant. Now, this is only one version of the 1040, and other forms might be required.
Whew! Taxes are complicated. Do you file your own taxes? Do you find it easy to handle your own finances, or do you turn to others for advice and support? Some people love numbers and the world of accounting. Thank goodness for those people. They pay attention to detail and they understand finances. Well, here's a final challenge for everyone. Can you explain the tax system in your country? How do taxes work? You can put your explanation in the comments. We'll end here. Please like the video if you learned something new and share the lesson with others who can benefit from it. As always, thanks for watching and happy studies.
Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Why not join me on Patreon? And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube.